Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome today's guest. Her name's Dr. Diane Finegood. She's a professor and fellow in the Maurice J. Wosk Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. Hi Diane.
Hello there.
Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. So for people who don't know you already, can you explain a bit more about your background, what you specialize in, what you currently do within the medical field?
Sure, thank you. I have a very diverse background in the health and wellness field. I have been a researcher for 35 years and have done research in a whole variety of different areas. In Canada, we talk about having 4 pillars of research: basic science, clinical research, health systems research, and population health, and I've worked in all 4 of those. My original background is in physiology and in engineering. And I've also had the opportunity to do a couple of leadership positions in the health and wellness field. I was a scientific director for one of our National Institutes of Health Research in Canada, and I also was the CEO of our provincial health research funding body. So I've kind of seen health and wellness from many sides of the fence. Probably the most important parts of my background that are relevant to the conversation today include a lot of experience in my early career doing mathematical modeling. I've worked in areas. I work now as a leader of a health systems research alliance. I've worked in public health, and also my main focus is really about the complexity and how complex is not the same as complicated, and we need to think differently about approaching complex problems.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know we're going to be getting into a bit more detail about that later on. So thinking about the current situation then, we're all in a state of panic. People are worried about their health. They're stuck at home. They're having to make a lot of adjustments in their lifestyle. And, what kind of challenges specifically do you see people facing, or are you concerned about?
So one of the things that I'm most concerned about is that we need to view the problem as I said earlier, complex, not just complicated. When we have a complicated problem, and I'll do a quick analogy for you, a simple problem would be baking a cake. You've got a recipe, follow it, pretty much everybody's going to do it, they don't need to be an expert. A complicated problem is sending a rocket to the moon. You do need some expertise, but with a bit of trial and error, you can do it repeatedly. It's predictable, it's controllable, you can design for it. But raising a child is complex. It's unpredictable, it depends on the child's genes and environment and all kinds of things. And what you learn with one child doesn't necessarily apply to the next. So you need different kinds of strategies when you're dealing with a complex problem than a complicated problem. And we're used to thinking more about complicated problems. Mostly the scientific method is designed to tackle complicated problems, not complex problems. So I think one of the challenges right now is that everybody's world has become everybody's world has become more complex. And that's a common thing. Everybody's world's become more complex. And the level of complexity that you're experiencing depends on whether you still have a job or not, whether you're able to shelter safely at home, what community you live in, the quality of the elected officials and the public officials in the area where you live, even the density of the city that you live in. All of these different factors play a role in determining how challenging it might be for any individual to shelter in place, to do what needs to be done with respect to physical distancing, and to maintain their mental health. So that's common. We all have a more complex world. But what makes it complex varies from individual to individual. So that's a big challenge for us as a society to sort out. So that would be one of the challenges. A second one, I think, is the stress of not knowing when this is all going to end. We hear people asking our elected officials all the time, when is this going to end? Can you tell us when we're going to come out of this? But because it's a complex situation, we can't predict it. As I said earlier, complicated is predictable, controllable, designable. Complex is unpredictable, self-organizing, and emergent. So what's happening today is not necessarily predictable from what happened yesterday. Yes, it's true, mathematical models and epidemiologists looking at data from other countries can make some predictions about what might happen in your own community, but they can vary widely depending on the assumptions that you make. So that need to kind of know what's going to happen must be very stressful for people when you really can't predict it. And so I think that's one of the major challenges that we need to sort of come to grips with.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Was there another challenge you wanted to mention?
I was just going to say that we also have a strong need to have our elected officials and our public servants fix the problem. We really want somebody else to fix the problem. But in complexity, we all have to act to help fix the problem. So, all three of those things are associated with the nature of the complexity of the challenge. And I think we have to find different ways to lean into that complexity and move towards a solution. And solutions is a strong word. You can't solve a complex problem. You can make things better or worse, but it never ends. There's no stopping rule for a complex problem.
I see what you mean. So what you're talking about then is adjusting your mindset around the current situation, recognizing what's out of your control and what's in your control, and trying to have a different outlook on what we're facing, rather than looking to someone else to fix it or just hoping that it will go away. Actually facing it head on, dealing with the implications of that, and trying to prioritize your health in the process.
So let's think about it this way. When it comes to, so I said the common thing is that our world and each individual's world has gotten more complex. So if your world or my world is more complex than I have the capacity to deal with, because I have, if I don't have the financial resources or the housing and the shelter, whatever it is that I might not have to deal with that complexity, then I'm more likely to fail at what I need to do and what I'm expected to do. If I have that capacity, if the complexity of the choices that I have to make is reduced, then I'm more likely to succeed. That's a principle of systems thinking, is what I would say, and thinking when a problem is complex. So what does that mean for us as individuals? Those of us who live in privilege, who have a safe place to be sheltered, who can access groceries, who have the resources, who haven't lost our job, well, it probably means that we have to be thinking about the people around us in order to help either increase their capacity to weather the storm or to decrease the complexity of the challenges that they might face. So that might start with ourselves and our families, but it can also spread to the people around us and the communities around us. And I tend to be a glass half full person, thinking that I'm hopeful that in fact we have a shift towards real humanity as a result of this crisis, because we see how important it is to take care of the people around us. So that's one important way to sort of address this imbalance or this increase in the complexity of everybody's world. It's challenging to think, okay, so there's this challenge and this challenge and this challenge, but everybody's different. It all depends, as I said earlier, on where you are, who you are, what your history is, what your health history is, all of those sorts of things. So each of us is experiencing this just a little bit differently, and we can't come up with simple solutions that are going to fit everybody. I had hoped in Canada we might actually go towards something like a minimum basic income as a monetary solution here. That I think would have been a very helpful thing. But now instead, with the various programs that we've created in Canada, people are trying to figure out, that have lost their job or their business is going down the tubes, they're trying to find the resources. And I'm worried that many people will fall through the cracks, because when you set rules like that and you don't recognize the heterogeneity, the diversity of the people in your population, that's a challenge. So that's one of the ways that you can kind of overcome this.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's been a lot of confusion about within my network about what people are eligible for, and it's kind of almost encouraging people not to work if they could have some kind of income. It is quite confusing. So, considering that everyone's in a different set of circumstances and everyone's handling it differently, are there any kind of practical ways that someone could apply these principles that you're talking about to their own life? How can they, personalize their approach to this?
So, as I said, one of the things that's important is in complicated problems, you can have a top-down solution where the people we've elected and the people who work for them can fix the problem. And that was kind of how we were working in the early days of the pandemic, when we were trying to prevent it from spreading in community. But now that it's in community, everybody has to act. We all have to act, and we have to act to help each other. I think it's super important to remember that we can influence the other end of this. We can influence what emerges out of this pandemic by the actions we as individuals take to contribute to the collective. And so if you are able and have the bandwidth, the capacity to actually act, then there are many people in your community who can use support. I, for example, am working with my institution to build a community engagement network so that people on campus who already have connections in various communities around Vancouver and elsewhere can find others to help them address the problems that they may have always been addressing, but can now be can find more people to be helpful. So I think that's one of the ways that we can maybe reduce our own stress, particularly if we're in a less stressful situation. Be conscious of the people around you, your neighbors. Check in with your friends and family, of course, we all know that. But then start to look to the less fortunate around us, the people who have less privilege than us, and see what is it that we can do by working with others, by self-organizing ourselves with others and creating networks and teams that can address some of these kinds of issues. We can influence what emerges out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it gives you a sense of control in very uncertain times as well, because you can reach out to certain people. There are certain things that you can do, and because everyone is dealing with it differently, everyone has different needs. You can really try to be there in a way that is meaningful to a particular person or a particular community. And I've seen a lot of businesses moving things online, whether it's resources or programs or classes, and it's really quite amazing to see what is and could emerge from this difficult time.
Absolutely. I think, as I said, it's hard to predict what will come of this, in part because of all these innovative approaches people are taking. I've been known to say, we're never going back to where we were. There will be some form of new normal. Hard to predict what that looks like. We can influence it. I teach a course right now, and it's actually a cohort-based course where for the first 2 months of this semester, I had 16 students who were meeting daily, face-to-face, in a room, being in dialogue, working in community, doing community projects. And when we moved online, it was a big shift for the students. And I can't imagine that I'll go back to a situation where everything is face-to-face all the time again, because universities can do a lot online. Other people can't, so it's probably our responsibility as well to be the last ones, if you will, or the people who can do the most online should be the last ones to go back to work face-to-face if we can maintain our mental health, which requires also getting out and exercising and things like that, which most people know. It's important, because of the complexity, the other thing that's important to remember is a notion that we need to act locally, because each individual is different, but each locality is different. And by acting locally and connecting regionally and learning globally, we can actually really learn a lot, because different communities are at different stages of the pandemic. They've started in different times. They've got different experiences, and we need to learn from that. Let's not harp on when is it going to be over, but ask how can we make the ending the way we want it.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, different technologies and systems are available in different locations as well. So everyone's handling things differently. Some things will work well, some things won't, and we can all kind of learn from each other. I've also been finding that a lot of people have been reconnecting with, you know, old friends and family from years ago that they wouldn't usually speak to, but now suddenly, you know, everyone's reconnecting, and you know, that's something nice that's come from it, I think.
It's one of the first things that's nice. And yes, many terrible things will come out of this. Many people have lost their jobs. Many businesses will go under and not be able to recover from this. Many people will die. This is not, but we don't really have anyone to blame. We usually want to blame somebody, but in this case, there's really no blame to be assigned. Let's stop worrying about that kind of approach to solving our problems, and let's all get on with actually contributing to that solution that we want to emerge out of this terrible shock to the globe, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that saying, move in the direction that the horse is going. You know, this is happening whether we like it or not. And, you know, the more that you try to fight it, the more that you say to yourself, this was not convenient for me. This has really put a spanner in the works. It doesn't change the situation. But what we can change is how we handle it, how we choose to act, and how we choose to support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking when you made that comment of the quote of, you know, skate where you want the puck to be, the old Wayne Gretzky quote. But I've just said we don't know where the puck's going to be. So I guess we need to change it to skate to where you want the puck to be.
Yeah, or where it currently is heading, even though it's going to be moving a lot. Yeah. Thank you for sharing those insights. Do you have any final resources or websites or anywhere that people could go to get more information about this kind of thing?
So I don't have any specific websites about complexity and COVID-19, but there are a number of websites out there for people who are interested in learning how to think differently, to think in a systems way or to address complex problems. One is called the Wosk Centre for Systems Thinking. Or the Waters Foundation for Systems Thinking. They've been around for many years and have tools, the habits of a systems thinker, that kind of thing. And the other one that I often send people to is the resource page on the Australian Prevention Partnership Centre, or TAPC. So that's the Australian Prevention Partnership Centre. They have a very nice resource page around systems thinking, in their case around prevention of chronic disease, but nonetheless I think that many of these things would apply in this instance.
Thank you so much, Diane. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of your wisdom.
Thank you.